Bartu, come back at once. You haven't finished with me yet. You don't know how to fix the hyperdrive. Chewbacca can do it. I'm standing here in pieces, and you're having delusions of grandeur.
Something tells me this is going to be the last episode of Delusions of Granular. Well, not the last episode of Delusions of Granular, but the last episode that we actually talk about something that isn't Force Awakens related. Seems like we're really ramping up here, folks, and I think that it's quite possible that throughout the rest of the year, until the movie is released at least, we might actually have just all Force Awakens content coming at you. I don't know. We'll see. But wanted to, when JP and I started out on this podcast, we wanted to get granular with a new topic every week. So some of those topics are broad. Some of them are, in their own right, granular. This week, wanted to talk about a little granular topic before we blast off into Force Awakens territory. So, well, folks, who am I? I am Ron, and this is Delusions of Granular. We are a podcast where, like I said, we get granular every week on a different Star Wars topic. You can find all of our past episodes at delusionsofgranular.com, or subscribe to us, as always, on iTunes or Stitcher, or leave us a review there if you're so inclined. Also, you can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/swdog, or on Twitter at swdog77. And if you would like to contribute to the show, please call us at 651-337-9364, or email us at swdog77@gmail.com. All right, folks, so what am I going to talk about this week? Well, when it was initially announced that the EU is going away, and moving forward, everything that we were getting as far as new content was going to be in canon, they kicked that all off with a short story in a magazine. That's right, folks. The first thing out of the gates when everything switched over, and now everything that they do, every story that's told counts in canon. The first thing they released was a short story, an Star Wars Insider, number 149, called Blade Squadron. So, what the heck? What were they thinking? That's the way you announce your big kickoff for this storytelling? Well, I guess maybe. Alright, so I'm beating around the bush here. Alright, so what they've done is since issue 149, they've released almost fairly every issue of Star Wars Insider, the fan magazine. They've released a short story, and they've made all these short stories count in canon. Now, the first one being Blade Squadron seems like it may have been actually written before they made the switch to, the EU doesn't count. Everything is now moving forward in canon. It may have been written before that happened, and it was grandfathered in. Who's to say? But what I wanted to do on this episode, and this will probably be another one of those episodes which will continue on in the future, because I've only actually read a few of these short stories, is to kind of talk about them. So, the first one being Blade Squadron. Apparently, this is one I didn't read because it's continuing on, and I wanted to kind of complete the story before I started talking about it. But Blade Squadron takes place around the Battle of Endor, I guess it's about a B-wing squadron that's kind of on a suicide mission, and yeah, I'll cover off on that at another later date. But how this came to my attention, now I'm not a regular subscriber to Star Wars Insider, so I kind of had to track down these back issues. But how I came to know about this or become aware of it recently is that the first part of Blade Squadron was actually re-released on StarWars.com. So you can go to StarWars.com and read this short story that is a part of the new canon. And then apparently they're going to start publishing these more regularly on StarWars.com. But they're also going to kind of keep them going in Star Wars Insider too. So I guess they're trying to get people to, subscribe to their magazine. But also, there is a novel, kind of a compendium novel, coming out later this year, actually after the big Force Friday hullabaloo, The Rise of the Empire. Now, The Rise of the Empire is going to be, like I said, a compendium. It's going to come out on October 6th. It's going to be a compilation book, and this is interesting. It's going to include A New Dawn, the Canon Rebels prequel, as well as Tarkin, two novels that we've previously talked about on the show. I've read them both, but they're also going to include 3 short stories in this book called Mercy Mission, Bottleneck, and The Levers of Power. So apparently, reading up on this, these short stories are going to, in a way, connect A New Dawn to Tarkin. So, they're going to start connecting the cartoon show to, actual movie characters, which should be interesting. And, we all know Mercy Mission is something that Vader actually says in A New Hope. So, I have no idea what these short stories are going to be about, but look forward to that. That'll be on October 6th, possibly sooner in Star Wars Insider, possibly later. I don't know. Like I said, this Blade Squadron series, Part 1 was in issue 49, or 149. Part 2 has already been published as well, and Star Wars Insider issue number 150, and a new chapter is coming in 160. So that will continue on. So apparently, I haven't read this yet. Maybe the suicide mission was a failure. Maybe it was a success. I don't know, but Blade Squadron still seems to be flying around out there. So what did I read? Well, I started off in no particular order, but I read 3 of these short stories. I read The End of History, the 1,000 Levels Down, and Last Call at the Zero Angle. Okay? So, what are these books? Or what are these short stories? They're not books, they're short stories. Okay, so The End of History, let's just kind of go through them one by one. The End of History, it first appeared in Star Wars Insider number 154. These stories are really vignettes. They're like 6 pages long at the most. Apparently, there's a timeline for these books, these stories, kind of fitting them into the timeline, the official timeline now. So the End of History actually takes place 22 years after The Phantom Menace. So Phantom Menace in the new timeline is year 1. So this is 22 years later. This is around the time of 22 years after Phantom Menace. So this is kind of the fall of the Jedi. Order 66 has already happened. And that is really what this kind of story is about. But we'll get into that in a second. So this was written by author Alex Freed, who's actually more of a comic book writer. He's written several titles for the Dark Horse comics. And in these short stories in the Star Wars Insider, they also have a little bit of illustrations to them. So this one was illustrated by Chris Scalf. and he has also illustrated many of the covers for Star Wars comics. So a lot of comic book background for these short stories. What is the end of history about? Okay, so this is there's basically two characters in this. There's a woman by the name of Miru Nidrin Akar, and a guy named Antron Bach. I'll just call him Maru and Antron from now on, because I'm not going to try to keep repeating her last name. But she's a member of the Corellian Resistance, which sounds to me like another band of rebels, like our friends on Star Wars Rebels. And she crash lands on a Geonosian colony world, and she runs into this Antron. Now, Antron is this older dude, and he's kind of an antique dealer, and he's a little bit concerned about her crash landing on this planet by him, because he's actually kind of a keeper of a lot of Jedi relics, and it becomes more a tale of him having to choose whether he wants to help this woman or kind of keep these Jedi artifacts safely hidden from the Empire. And honestly, that's pretty much all I can tell you about this story. I mean, these are really, really kind of very small tales. You don't get a lot of background about anything more in the Star Wars universe. You don't get anything, new or earth-shattering. But basically, just kind of this small tale of two people, and the choices they have to make in dealing with the Empire. So, I wasn't super excited about this. Picking this one as the first one, I was just like, okay, this is canon. Like, this is what's really the point of this, right? Like, this. It just doesn't really do anything for me, right? So, all right, I'll try another one and see where it goes from there. So I ended up picking, for the next one I read, 1,000 Levels Down. Now, this one sounded more exciting to me. This one actually takes place on Coruscant, hence the title, 1,000 Levels Down. We all know that Coruscant is made up, the entire planet is a city, and there's many different levels. The deeper you go, the more into slums you go. So 1,000 levels down, this possibly means we're dealing with the underworld of Coruscant. This story appeared in Star Wars Insider 151. It takes place 32 years after Phantom Menace. So now we're talking about, I guess this is around the time of Luke and Han. Possibly in between that period when, Rebels maybe. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out this new timeline. I'm not quite clear on that yet, but it's definitely after the fall of the Jedi. So, we can kind of pick up from there. Again, this is by author Alexander Freed. This one was illustrated by Joe Caroni, another Dark Horse artist, as well as a guy I don't have any information on, but his name is Brian Miller, my guess is. Also another comic book artist, possibly cover artist. So even though this story takes place on Coruscant, this is dealing with two young expatriate Alderaanians, survivors, I guess, a brother and a sister, Anandra and Santiago. These are two kids. She, Anandra, is a 16-year-old girl, and Santiago is her younger brother, who's around 8 years old. And they're kind of surviving, trying to find some shelter from the storm, so to speak. Again, not much I can tell you about this story. It's them kind of trying to find people that they can trust, that they can start a new life or new home on this planet. It reminded me of a novel that I've read recently called Wool Wool is a story of basically these people that live in these silos and the different levels that they live on, and how hard it is to get from one level to the next. It's quite an undertaking to go from level to level. And this story really does kind of play up on that. Like when they're on one level, to go 40 levels in either direction, it's tough. It's a long travel. So, I was. This one was a little more exciting. I think they meet some more interesting characters. It's not just dealing with two people against the Empire. It's really meeting more of the underbelly characters. Are they good? Are they bad? But really, there wasn't much more to the story. Again, trying to figure out what the point of these canon stories are, or short stories are. Are they trying to kind of get us to be more familiar with other characters in the Star Wars universe? Are they trying to make the universe bigger by telling stories of other people? Are they just trying to prepare us for a time when we're not being told stories about Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and Leia? I don't know. Maybe this is just their way of kind of preparing us for the future. I don't know. They seem to have some kind of game plan for these short stories, but I'm not entirely sure what that is yet. Just from the first 3 that I've read. So it'll be interesting going forward. So let's talk about the last one. Wasn't as excited about the first 2. But I thought I'd give this one more try before I moved on to other things to talk about. So, Last Call at the Zero Angle, and this one is actually pretty interesting. This one was written by a man named Jason Fry, who's written a lot of the Star Wars reference books. Also, kind of has written for Star Wars Insider as just a journalist. The timeline for this is unknown, at least on the Wikipedia timeline for these short stories is just kind of listed as unknown. We'll get to that in a minute because it kind of does play into the story. It appeared in Star Wars Insider 156, so a little bit later on. So, maybe they've already, they've done this a few times. They're starting to get their feet wet a little bit more, get used to these stories. So what is this one about? This one is about actually a TIE fighter squadron, not our usual what we're hearing about. We've read many stories about Red Squadron and Wedge Antilles and his crew, but no, this one is about the TIE fighter pilots, and they're actually hanging out at a bar called the Zero Angle. So this really plays into it. One thing that I found interesting, even though this is a short story, it has a glossary. There's a lot of terms thrown around in this, is really pilot slang. So right away we're kind of learning more and more about the Star Wars universe, just kind of how these TIE fighter pilots refer to themselves and the enemy and their ships, and the X-Wing fighters. They all have terminology for this, slang words that they like to use, which starts to color in the world a little bit more so than what I was getting from the first 2 short stories. I'm really kind of getting more of a feel for who these characters are. And we also find out that there's kind of a rivalry against the two. There's 2 types of TIE fighter pilots. There's the ones that fly in space that we've seen in all of the Star Wars movies, and then there's the ones that fly in atmosphere, right? And the ones that fly in atmosphere are actually called ground hogs, or ground-hogs. And then the ones that fly in space are called vac heads. It's like they're actually in a vacuum. And they're kind of, they don't tend to hang out together. They tend to have a little bit of animosity towards one another. But at this bar, this or zero angle bar. They actually, the patron of the bar actually serves both groups, and there's countless bar fights that happen amongst the groups. A lot of antagonizing between the two groups, but when all is said and done, the bartender kind of keeps the peace, and they end up all getting along. And what's really, really kind of ties this book together for me, or this, I keep saying books, they're stories. What really ties this story together for me is how it ends. And folks, these are short stories, and as always on Delusions of Granular, we blow through spoilers, so I'm just going to kind of say spoilers on this, but the book ends by being announced that one of the Empire's secret or important weapons, the DS-1, has been destroyed by a small rebel uprising. Now, we all actually know what DS-1 is by another name, but they refer to it as DS-1 in this book, what the TIE fighter pilots refer to it as it's probably known in the Empire. The DS-1 is actually the Death Star. So, very interesting book, very interesting story about kind of what is going on elsewhere in the Empire when the news of the Death Star being destroyed makes way. Very interesting. I thought this was a fun little tale, and when I say little, again, it's really 6 pages at most. I would definitely, if you're interested in all things Star Wars, pick this one up, find it. Where I'm getting my Star Wars Insiders is kind of at a comic book shop. They have all the old issues or some of the more recent older issues on the racks there, so you can pick up all of them. There's about a dozen of them already written and either been published, or like I said, they're going to be published in this Rise of the Empire compendium that's coming out. So it sounds like they're kind of here to stay. Sounds like it's canon that is going to make its way into just being a part of the fabric of the larger canon now that encompasses everything. It encompasses the movies, encompasses TV shows, the novels, the comics, and the one I always keep questioning is the video games, but apparently the video games moving forward are also going to be canon as well. So there you have it, folks. The first our first taste of canon stories before everything else came out, before Rebels hit the way. We got these short stories, and they're continuing. So whether it's just a ploy to get people to subscribe to the magazine, or if they're trying to paint a larger picture, possibly this Blade Squadron is going on for multiple parts. So maybe that'll be collected in a novel or told in some other way. Who knows? But that's where we're at this week, folks. So once again, my name is Ron. You have been listening to Delusions of Granular, and as always, folks, until next time, stay granular.
I'm the light.